The laughter came first. Sharp, public, unfiltered. A well-known critic leaned into his microphone during a live panel discussion and said, "Maybe it's time for Will Smith to accept that the magic is gone." The room reacted with that uncomfortable blend of gasps and scattered chuckles. Cameras zoomed in. Headlines practically wrote themselves. Will Smith is finished. Career in decline? The clip spread faster than context ever could. But what nobody noticed in that moment, what nobody could measure, was the silence on Will's side. He didn't fire back. He didn't tweet. He didn't issue a statement. He went back to work. Months earlier, before the critics' comments, Will had already wrapped filming on a new project. No overhyped press tour. No loud promises. Just a tightly crafted performance built on restraint rather than charisma. Industry insiders whispered that it was different. Subtle. Controlled. Unexpected. But whispers don't trend. Criticism does. So the narrative stayed negative. Until opening weekend. Friday night. The premiere wasn't flashy. No circus. No desperation. Just confidence. Early social reactions hit first. Did not expect this. He disappeared into the role. This might be one of his best. Then Saturday numbers rolled in. Strong. By Sunday evening, analysts were rechecking projections. The film wasn't just performing. It was outperforming. By the second weekend, something shifted in the tone of coverage. Not loud apologies, but subtle rewrites. Will Smith returns to form. A career renaissance. The same outlets that amplified doubt now amplified success. Because the one thing louder than a critic is a sold-out theater. Meanwhile, the critic who sparked the viral clip found himself invited back onto panels. This time with a different question. What do you think about the numbers? He adjusted in his seat. Cleared his throat. Well, box office doesn't always equal quality. But the reviews kept climbing. Audience scores soared. Word of mouth became unstoppable. People weren't showing up out of curiosity. They were showing up twice. Inside theaters, something interesting happened. There were no loud cheers. No spectacle moments. Just quiet. Focused attention. The kind that only happens when a performance holds you still. Will wasn't chasing applause. He was commanding attention. And when the credits rolled, the applause came anyway. Backstage at a Q&A screening, someone finally asked him about the criticism. He smiled, not bitter, not triumphant. Just steady. You can't argue with opinions, he said calmly. But you can answer with effort. That line traveled almost as fast as the old clip. Except this time, it carried weight. Not because it was clever. Not because it was defiant. But because it was true. The clip of that Q&A moment began circulating the same way the criticism had months earlier. Only this time, the tone was different. Measured. Reflective. People weren't sharing it to mock. They were sharing it to underline something deeper. Resilience without noise. In industry offices across Los Angeles, projections were being revised again. The film had officially crossed expectations. Then it doubled them. By week 3, something interesting happened. The conversation wasn't about the critic anymore. It wasn't even about the controversy surrounding Will's career. It was about craft. Breakdowns of specific scenes started appearing online. Analysts pointed out the micro-expressions, the restraint in dialogue delivery, the way he let silence do the heavy lifting. Film students dissected it. Actors praised it. Directors took notes. The performance had shifted from comeback to case study. Meanwhile, the critic who sparked it all sat on another panel. This time, the tone was defensive. Well, he began carefully. I always said he had potential to surprise us. The host raised an eyebrow. Because the internet never forgets tone. And it certainly doesn't forget certainty. The original clip replayed beside the new one. Side by side. Confidence. Then correction. At a packed screening in New York, the energy felt different. Not hype-driven. Earned. When Will walked into the theater unexpectedly, the crowd didn't scream immediately. They stood. Slowly. A standing ovation that started in the back row and rolled forward like a wave. No theatrics. Just respect. He didn't wave dramatically. He didn't take a bow. He simply nodded once, hand over heart. Because this wasn't about ego. It was about response. Behind closed doors, executives who had hesitated months earlier were suddenly eager again. Scripts were sliding across tables. Calls were being made. Not because he demanded it. Because performance demands attention. And numbers demand acknowledgement. The box office kept climbing. International markets surged. Streaming pre-sales shattered platform records. It wasn't loud. It was consistent. Late one evening, long after premieres and press tours had quieted, Will sat in a dim editing suite watching a cut of a future project. No entourage, no celebration, just focus. Because for him, this wasn't revenge. It wasn't about proving someone wrong. It was about proving himself right. About knowing that craft outlasts commentary. That effort echoes longer than opinion. The critic eventually addressed the situation directly. Sometimes, he admitted on air, the audience sees something critics miss. That clip trended too. But it didn't sting. It felt balanced. Growth doesn't just happen on one side of the conversation. Sometimes it humbles everyone involved. Award season whispers began circulating. Not forced. Organic. Career best. Deeply controlled. Unexpectedly powerful. The narrative had fully transformed. What began as public doubt had evolved into quiet dominance. That was the phrase journalists began using. Not flashy resurgence. Not dramatic redemption. Not explosive comeback. Quiet. Dominance. Two words that didn't beg for attention. They earned it. By the fourth weekend, something rare happened. The drop-off in ticket sales was smaller than expected. Industry veterans know what that means. It means word of mouth is stronger than marketing. It means people aren't just watching, they're recommending. Group chats lit up. You seen it yet? Go watch it. Trust me. No controversy attached. No defense campaign. Just genuine momentum. Inside one packed theater in Atlanta, an older couple stayed through the credits. Not scrolling. Not talking. Just sitting. When the lights came up, the husband leaned over and said quietly, he still got it. It wasn't loud, but it echoed the sentiment spreading across cities. Meanwhile, the numbers kept climbing internationally. Europe embraced it. Asia responded strongly. Markets that once hesitated were now pushing additional screens. The studio reallocated marketing budgets, not to salvage anything, but to sustain the surge. The film wasn't surviving. It was thriving. On a late-night show appearance, Will was asked a simple question. Did you ever doubt yourself? He paused. Not theatrically, just honestly. Everybody doubts themselves, he replied. The difference is whether you let it stop the work. That clip traveled too. But this time it didn't carry tension. It carried maturity. Back in the critics' world, something subtle shifted. Panels became more cautious. Predictions less absolute. Because this wasn't just about one actor or one film anymore. It was about the reminder that careers are long arcs, not single headlines. And arcs bend over time. Streaming rights were sold for a record figure. The studio announced extended theatrical runs in key markets. Merchandising interest increased. Talk of sequels surfaced, not desperate ones, but strategic possibilities. Investors paid attention, because revenue speaks fluently in every language. But here's what made it powerful. There was no victory lap, no subtle jab at critics, no passive-aggressive interviews, just consistent professionalism. At press events, Will thanked the crew, highlighted the director, praised the cast, shared credit, because quiet dominance doesn't gloat. It builds. Film schools began inviting the director to discuss the project. Students asked about specific scenes. What made that moment work? And again, the answer pointed back to restraint, subtlety, control, the kind of performance that doesn't demand applause, it draws it naturally. One evening, months after the original insult, the critic attended a screening incognito. No panel, no commentary, just a seat in the dark. He watched the same scenes audiences had been praising. He listened to the silence in the theater. He felt the tension, and when the credits rolled, he clapped. Softly, because sometimes humility happens quietly too. Award nominations eventually followed. Not guaranteed, not forced, earned. The conversation had completely shifted. From is he finished? To how did he pull that off? That's the thing about quiet dominance. It doesn't react. It recalibrates. It doesn't argue. It performs. It doesn't chase approval. It commands respect. Months later, when the final box office tally was published, it exceeded every early projection. The numbers weren't just good. They were undeniable. And somewhere online, that original clip of criticism still floated around, now usually paired with a caption that read, "Receipts." In the end, nothing dramatic exploded. There was no fiery speech, no public confrontation, no mic drop moment, just effort, craft, patience, and results. Because the loudest rebuttal isn't anger, it's achievement. And when the dust settled, one truth remained clear. Critics talk in headlines. But legacies? They're written in consistency.